Alright, this is my offset smoker. It's a little rough on the eyes, but cooks pretty well. Today I'm going to be making some smoked pork chops. Should only take about an hour and a half or so actual cooking time, but we're going to have to get the smoker going almost an hour ahead of time. So over here in the firebox, I've got full charcoal basket loaded up, and we'll get this thing started. Going to be using these Weber lighter cubes. I don't know if you've never used these things before. They are great. Make it real easy to get charcoal going. Alright, so we're going to take these and we're going to stick them just on the inside here, so that when they are put back into place, there they are right there, right on one edge is what we're looking for. So now that we've got those set where we want them, get them started up, slide that right in, and now we're starting. See my damper position on my inlet for my firebox, about where I've got it, and where I've got the vent damper. Those two settings should get me to maintain roughly about 225. I'll adjust it once it gets going, but we'll let this thing start getting heated and wait for it to come up. Got my temperature probe hooked up, smoke's rolling. I'm gonna shut the lid, and we'll use this to verify the thermometer that's on the outside of this thing, because as you can see right here, I've got this set where actual 225 inside the cooking chamber should be, so I'll verify that on the digital one whenever we get up to temperature, and as long as it's good, we'll use this one to monitor the cooking chamber, and then I'll hook the probe into the meat itself. Alright, so I've got my pork chops ready here. This half I've got Famous Dave's rib rub on it. I would have put that on the whole thing, but I didn't have enough here at home at the time. So on this half I have Phil Robertson's Cajun Rub 2 that he sells online. Also very good stuff, and we'll get these out on the smoker. Okay, been running about a half an hour or so, showing 225 on the digital probe. Not quite 225 on that one, but I've adjusted that indicator so that I know where 225 from the digital probe would be. So I'll use that for my reference point. But I'm going to let this thing sit for at least another half an hour. Let this temperature stabilize, because we've just now come up to this 225, 226. You really don't want to load the meat yet, because we don't have an accurate idea of how this thing's going to settle out on our temperature. And what you don't want to happen is to load the meat and end up finding out a half an hour into your cook that your cooking chamber is way too hot because you didn't wait long enough for it to stabilize. I actually backed off the air damper just a little bit because it seemed to be rising pretty quickly. I've got it pretty much at minimum position now, and I'm going to give it about 10-15 minutes and check on it, and I'm going to give it the full half hour before I load it up. Okay, it's only been about 15 minutes, and I'm all the way up to 280. Now these pork chops, I could smoke them at 275. I prefer to smoke them at lower, so I'm just going to make sure that this thing doesn't climb any higher than it is right now. And then I'm probably going to go ahead and load it up, because I've got my dampers all the way down to a minimum, and it looks like today we are cooking a little hotter than I normally like to, but I can't back it off anymore As long as I don't climb up higher than where it's at right now, I'll be alright. So I've got my smoker loaded up. Meat probe is in the center, and we're going to let this thing cook. This is a product I like to use for flavor. Apple Cooking Chunks by Western. Throw one of these chunks in there, and really one chunk like this one here ought to be enough to smoke for a good half hour to 45 minutes without having to add anything else. So we're just going to open this up, toss it in, let it smoke. About 30 minutes into the cook, 126 on the internal temp, holding right at about that 225 mark, temperature stabilized after it had been cooking for a little bit once I put the lid back down. I lost a lot of heat because I had the lid open for quite a while loading it with all the pork chops. If you load it quickly, like if you're just doing a pork shoulder or a rack of ribs and you don't have the lid open that long, it doesn't lose near as much heat. But it has bounced back. Like I said, we're pretty close to that 225 mark. And got about 20 more degrees to go. We're going for 145 degree internal temp. And then we'll let it rest for 3 minutes and it'll be time to eat. Alright, 145 degree internal temp. And we are finished. And there we have the finished product. Let these rest for 3 minutes and enjoy.